evening. It's 6 o'clock on Friday, March 17th, 2017. Welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for the English edition of Aura News, where we bring you today's top stories translated into English every weeknight. After last week's work lunches with the DP chairman, the EU ambassadors held a meeting today with Prime Minister Edi Rama. The U.S. Ambassador Donald Liu and Foreign Minister Ditmir Bushati were also at the meeting, which lasted for more than 90 minutes. It is learned that the political crisis of the country was the focus of the meeting, as the opposition remains protesting outside the Prime Minister's office, asking for the establishment of a provisional government. Recently, the DP chairman held 3 consecutive meetings with different ambassadors, and not all of them from EU countries. The Democratic Party chairman held a meeting today with the former politically persecuted, where he vowed not to accept Fatmir Xhafaj as Minister of Interior. The DP chairman called Xhafaj a torturer from the communism era, dressed in the costume of a drug trafficker, and saying Fatmir Xhafaj will not be Minister of Interior for a single minute, only if he crosses over our bodies, threatens the DP chairman. Edi Rama has decided to propose a person for Minister of Interior who used to torture boys and girls during communism, a person who took off the costume of investigator and then, together with his brother, dressed up in the costume of drug traffickers. This is Fatmir Xhafaj. Let us all vow to stop Fatmir Xhafaj from crossing the door as the Minister of Interior unless he walks over our bodies. Edi Rama's removal is the only solution to pave the way towards a European perspective. Establishing a provisional government that will ensure free and fair elections is the solution. I call on Fatmir Xhafaj to withdraw from the escapade he has begun. He will not be Minister of Interior, not even for a single minute, declared the DP chairman. After meeting with the former politically persecuted, Mr. Basha told the media that the opposition will not withdraw from its request for a provisional government. Regarding the postponement of elections, the DP chairman said that it can be made only in the framework of the duties a provisional government should have in order to ensure electoral standards. European Parliament Member Edward Kuchen gave an interview for the European Business Review, where Mr. Kukan accused the Democratic Party of obstructing the judicial reform, which he considers to be of crucial importance for Albania's integration into the European Union. I fully support all efforts which lead to the implementation of the justice reform. I have called on politicians several times in Albania to proceed with establishing the vetting bodies and start implementing the reform. Time is of the essence here. I also repeatedly called on the opposition to resume their work in Parliament in order to move on with the reforms and make all necessary preparations for the upcoming elections, said Kukan. His comments are endorsed by German Socialist Knut Fleckenstein, who is the EP reporter on the Albanian dossier, who said, I cannot judge whether an attempt to block the judicial reform is the motivation for the current DP position. However, a blocked judicial reform is definitely the result of it, as the Albanian parliament cannot proceed with establishing the vetting commissions. German Socialist MEP Suzanne Mellier is holding the same position, saying that Albania should step up the pace of the judicial reform, as it is the key to starting EU accession negotiations. The chairman of the Socialist Party parliamentary group, Gramos Ruci, called out the opposition for trying to destabilize the country by causing an institutional crisis similar to that of 1997. According to Mr. Ruci, the opposition's boycott and its request to establish a provisional government are efforts to leave the country without a president and without a parliament. The president will be elected in a month, but there are some who do not want this, and that is the beginning of a crisis. The idea to not hold elections came up yesterday at the protesters' tent, which would mean that when the mandate of the current parliament ends in September, Albania would remain without a parliament and without a government. This is the crisis. What is happening now is an attempt at destabilization. We tried destabilization back in 1997, and we saw what happened. It's time to vote for the best solution, declared Mr. Ruci. The head of the Socialist Party parliamentary group made his statement from Fier during the distribution of legalization permits for 501 residents in a village. The U.S. State Department reports Albania to be a main producer and exporter of marijuana, stating in its annual report that cannabis cultivation has increased. Albania remains a significant source country for marijuana, as well as a transit route for cocaine and heroin destined for European markets. While Albanian authorities reported an increase in arrests and destruction of cannabis plantations in 2016, there were also reports of increased cannabis cultivation within the country. Albanian authorities continued regional cooperation with Italian police surveillance units, and the number of drug surveillance flights increased from the previous year. With the exception of cannabis, Albania is not a significant producer of illicit drugs, precursor chemicals, or synthetic drugs. The government of Albania does not maintain drug use prevalence statistics. Except for marijuana, illegal drug use does not appear to be common. According to Albanian State Police, or ASP, a total of 30.14 metric tons of marijuana was seized in 2016, and a total of 24,536,288 cannabis plants were eradicated. Italian Guardia di Finanza surveillance flights identified 2,086 suspected cannabis plantations and also measured a five-fold increase in the overall level of cultivation. The ASP also seized 57.33 kilograms of heroin and 7.16 kilograms of cocaine. The ASP, including border police, arrested 1,349 people for offenses linked to drug trafficking during 2016. Albania continues to receive assistance from the United States and European Union countries to enhance its counter-narcotics capacities. The government implemented 31 joint operations with international law enforcement agencies through October, mostly in cooperation with Italian authorities. The United States continues to provide assistance for integrated border management with a focus on maritime border control, counter-narcotics investigations, and judicial sector assistance programs, reads the report. The U.S. State Department's report caused several reactions today. The General Secretary of the Socialist Movement for Integration asked for an immediate reaction of responsible institutions. Shortly after that statement, the Prime Minister posted on his Facebook social account, "The U.S. State Department's report proved how much has been done in the fight against cannabis. Much remains to be done and will definitely be done." The departing Minister of Interior, Fatmir Xhafaj, also reacted, calling for a correct reading of the report. "I want to clarify the reading of U.S. State Department's report, according to an SMI spokesman. Without commenting on the incorrect reading, according to which the phenomenon has not been fought enough, I want to make the U.S. State Department reports of the last 4 years available. A comparative reading is needed to understand that Albania did not become a major source for marijuana production this year, nor last year, or even 2 years ago. Albania was recognized as such even before we took on this duty. Also, a comparative reading of the report would be enough to understand that the state police have increased the fight against the phenomenon. I know that political aims of opponent parties or competing parties with the Socialist Party is to receive more attention and more votes to justify their party's propaganda, and the truth of what they say comes in a second plan," reads Xhafaj's reaction, who added that all those who want the Socialist Party to fail will receive an answer by the Albanian people on June 18th. That's all for our English edition this evening. Please join us again Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m. for your local news in English. My name is Mari, and on behalf of Aura News, thank you and good night.